This is dealing with QuadLugs, and we're building the frame, the box quad frame. Of course, stickers, the adjustment arms, there's 4 of them. And we're going to get started with this first. We have a little prep work to do. We have a few holes to drill. One of them is going to be with an 1/8 inch bit. And first of all, too, I guess, is these are the items we'll need today. Number 1 Phillips screwdriver, 1/8 inch bit, 1/16 inch bit, drill motor, and I'm using a smaller one. You can use a bigger one. Smaller one's easier to handle. And of course a driver. But I normally put most of the screws in with my screwdriver. But that's your choice. So let's get started. Looks like that's all we're going to need today to put the frame together. First hole we're going to prep, 1/8 inch hole, or 1/8 inch bit rather. And we're going to place it in like that. We hold the adjustment head down and we'll drill through this area. When we do that, we're making the hole in this area right here, this place right here. And that's going to allow the screw to extend all the way through. This is where the nut's going to be placed in a little bit. Okay, so this one's done. What I do on drilling these holes is I'll place them like this. And I'll do the same with the others. And then I drill the holes for the legs or the landing gear there. And that way when we install these, they'll all be facing out or they'll be facing in depending on the way you install them. Again, using the 1/8 inch bit, we're going to go up about 3/8 of an inch and in the center here. Okay, so we'll do this one. And again, this is for our landing gear. So we're about center here, and we're about 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 inch up here. And we'll drill that. Again, this is an 1/8 inch bit. We don't drill them all the way through. We'll just drill them through here. Super easy. The other hole is a 1/16 inch bit. And we're actually going to drill through this hole and we'll be drilling this side out here. Just like that. So try to keep it straight this way and this way as best you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. And we'll drill that through. Okay, we have all of them drilled now. We're going to do that on the others. Now that we have these drilled, we're going to use our small bit to get out all the residue. Okay? If there's any residue in, when you go to put the screw in, it's going to be really tough. And then the other box here, we have different colors to choose from: red, white, purple, yellow, and clear. Here I'm building it in clear. But in this box we have the screws to install the ESC and the controller. We have the screw to secure the lid. Zip ties, Velcro, and sticky pads. We have our motor mounts. Kind of hard to see, they're clear. We have our feet for our landing gear. This is 1/4 by 1/2. This is our crossover wood. And this is all 1/2 by 1/2. 2 pieces 5 1/4 inch long, and that's for the sides of the body. 4 pieces 5 inches long, and that's our arms, our motor arms. 4 pieces 3 inches long, and that's for our landing gear. All the wood is in basswood. If you break any of the wood, you can get it from us. You can get it from your local hobby shop, or you can also get it from Hobby Lobby or Michael's, and they normally carry the basswood, and just make sure it's basswood. And again, 1/2 by 1/2, 1/4 by 1/2. It normally comes in 24-inch lengths, so 2 pieces pretty much rebuild your quad 1.5 to 2 times, and it's very inexpensive. So if you have any problem, you know where to get it. The boxes hold up really good, and you'll have an extra one. When you build, you'll have one left over as an extra. The colored parts are ABS, injection molded, and we don't really have a problem with them breaking. Anything's breakable, but it doesn't happen very often. All of the black parts that we have are glass filled or glass reinforced nylon, and they're extremely tough. So about the only place you'll have a problem with breakage is going to be in the wood, and it's easy to locate, inexpensive to buy, and very easy to change. Okay, let's move on. We have our choice of building either box. I'm going to build the one with our logo. We're going to start with the crossover wood first. And we did all of our prepping on our arms. Let me put this aside. And this is what how we're going to install the crossover wood. We're going to put a piece in one side. Some of them fit, go in really easy. Some of them you have to push to get them to slide in. But, one thing to remember is that anytime we're putting, installing the wood into one of the pieces, to make sure it's all the way in. So we're doing that. You can put some good pressure on it. It's not going to bother it. I've even used a hammer on it to put it in a few times just to see, and no problem at all. But don't recommend it, but you can if you need to. Anyway, it's all the way in. And I'm choosing on mine to put all the screws on the outside, in the back, and in the front. So that's how I'm going to do this. And this one, the screw is going to go this way, facing that way. Okay, so I'm going to do that. All of the wood, when we drill pilot holes, and that's what we're going to do now, we use 16th inch bit, a 16th inch bit for that. So we're going to make sure the wood's all the way in, and we're going to drill a pilot hole. Doesn't have to go all the way through. If you do, no problem. Just make sure if you're drilling, on a table or something, have some protection. You don't want to ruin a table, that's for sure. Okay. And here we're using 3/8 long screws that's going to go into here. And all these screws were packed in with the arms, or with the adjustment arms. So let's go ahead and get this in. Okay, we're going to go ahead and install the arm. We'll slide it through. We want to make sure that it's in, and we'll push it in. And there you see it, and you can just push here to make sure it's, fitting well. We're going to get the other arm, or the other adjustment arm. You'll notice the screw on this side, we want it on this same side. And we'll put it on and we'll push it in. And we'll get our 1/16 inch bit. And we're going to drill through the wood. And just a little bit, just to keep it from splitting. And again, we'll use our 3/8 long screw. And we're going to install it. And there you are. We're going to go ahead and put the other one in. And again, remembering these are on the outside and we want them again on the outside. Let's go ahead and put it through, push it in, and again the screw is going to be on the outside. Okay, we push it in, push it all the way in. We want to make sure of that. And once again, we'll use our 1/16 inch bit and we're going to drill that. Okay. And we'll take our 3/8 screw again and we'll secure that side. Okay, and we'll just push this back and make sure it looks nice, and that's what it looks like. So you have a screw here, 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 and here, and that locks the pieces together sideways. And the next thing we want to make sure is that this gap here and here are about the same, and then once again the gap here and here are about the same. If one's tighter than the other, you can just, gently push it back and forth like that till it's in the center. Okay? We're ready to put our side pieces on. So we're going to take our 5 1/4 inch pieces and we're going to slide them in. Again, remembering that some of these pieces go in really easy and some of them are a little bit tighter. If they're tighter, it's going to take some, effort to get it put in, but they'll slide in. And you want them to be flush here and here, the outside to be flush. And if you need to adjust it this way, you can. And we'll do the same thing here. We'll line it up. And again, we'll make sure there's smooth there and there. If you need to, we can pull them apart just to make sure. Okay, so we're in good shape. Another way to do this is put this wood on these two pieces before you slide it in. So if this wood is tight in these pieces, you can put these on first and then slide these two pieces and the wood in at one time into your cross members. You can do it that way too. Okay? The 5 inch pieces. These are 5 inches long and they're going to go into the adjustment head. And if you notice, some of them are a little bit loose this way. Turn it around, push it in, you'll see this is a lot tighter. And make sure this is pushed in all the way, all the way, all the way. You can do this for all of them. Make sure they're in all the way. Again, all the way. All the way. Okay? We're ready to install our adjustment arms. You want to make sure that this is flush on both sides, because when you drill this part out, it's going to drill through this wood and this wood, So you're not going to be able to move it anymore, you know, once the screw goes in. So just make sure they're flush on either side, this side and that side. Put your top piece, adjustment head on top, hold it down with your fingers. Use your 1/8 inch bit. You don't want to put too much pressure on it, it'll find its way through. Just put a little bit of pressure. It'll find its way through the first one. And now the second piece of wood. And you're through. The screws that come with the arm, or arms, are these. And you'll get, after it's all installed, you'll have extra screws with extra washers and nuts, and you want to keep those just in case one of them gets stripped out for some reason. You'll always have 4 extras. If you ever need any of these though, we have those. So we get a washer, put it on the screw, and we have the nut. This is a lock nut, and if you'll notice, one side is flat, the other side has a nylon insert. You want the nylon insert sticking up, and that's a lock nut. When you put it in the receptor, it fits in. I would hold it with my finger. And then we'll put adjustment head on top. We'll start it. Once it's started, you can release the nut. These adjustment arms move in 15-degree increments, and we want it at 45 degrees. So we have it out, and we go 15, 30, 45. If you have it this way, 15, 30, 45. Let's go ahead and screw it down. We're going to tighten it up really good after a while, but we're going to tighten it down to hold it in place now. Okay. We'll do the other side again. Make sure that it's flush here and here. Again, once this screw is put in, it locks this piece of wood in. We'll make sure it's all the way in. Place it on top, push down on it. Again, use the 1/8 inch bit. Not very much pressure is needed, and it'll guide its way through. Once again, we'll use the 1/16 inch bit to clean out the residue. We'll turn it over and we'll do the same. Okay. And we'll get our washer. Take one of the nuts and we'll install it into the receptor. We'll hold it in place. Again, we'll get the screw started and it'll hold itself in place. Then we'll 15, 30, 45. Again, we'll finish tightening this up after a while. Now we'll go ahead and finish up these two. Okay. Let's see. We have those all on. Now the next thing we're going to do is prep our landing gear. And once again, put them in the orientation we would be installing them. You'll notice that we have a hole in one side of all of them. So if we want the screw holes to be, you know, on the same side, we'll have to drill one hole in each one. Easy to do. Use the 1/8 inch bit. You may not be able to see it on this, but when you have it in hand, there's a round, little slight depression right here, and it's, I guess they use it to push these parts out of the mold. If you put your bit right in the center of this round depression, it'll put it in a perfect spot for you. And again, we're going to drill it just through one side. And we're going to do the same thing here. So by doing this, we'll have the screws again on one side. These are the 3-inch long landing gear, and once again we're going to push them all the way down. And some of them, like I said, are a little bit tighter than others, so you may have to give it a little help. We'll do the same thing here. Make sure they're all the way in. Okay. Again, we're drilling a pilot hole in the wood, so we're going to use the 1/16 inch bit. You don't have to go all the way through. And now we'll use our 5/8 long screws, and we'll get these installed. And I normally finish them off by hand. Okay. Now we're ready to install these. And again, we have the screws facing out, and we'll make sure like this. Okay, they're facing out. Let's go ahead and get our 1/8 inch bit, our 1/16 inch bit once again, 1/16 inch. Again, we're drilling in to the wood as a pilot hole. .5/8 long screws to install these. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Once again, they're installed, and we'll finish them off by hand. Done. Done. Okay, now we're ready to install our motor mounts. We're going to go ahead and prep those. We're almost done. 1/8 inch hole again. Or 1/8 inch bit. Again, if you're looking at it in hand, there's a round indentation, and again, that's where the parts are pushed out of the mold. Go right in the middle of this round indentation, and that'll put you right in the center. Again, just drilling through the outside here. You can put it into the side. Normally I put it in the bottom, Makes it a little bit, I think it turns out better that way. But you can put them inside if you choose to. Okay, do the same thing with all of these. Okay, these are all drilled out. So let's go ahead and turn this over. These are going to be installed like this. Your motor is going to be installed here. So that's how they're going to be put on. But I'm going to turn it over. It's a little bit easier. So we'll put it on, and let's put it flush with the end here. The wood is flush with the end of the piece. Once again, same old routine. 16th inch bit. Pilot hole. And we're going to use, once again, the 5/8 long screws. And we'll just double check with the screwdriver. And it's installed. We're going to do that on all the rest of them. Okay. Done. We're going to install the screw and the nut on it so it will secure our lid. I have the hot glue gun going right now, or heating up, and I'm going to put this in. I keep out of your way with it. And let's do it this way. Okay. And it's to hold the nut in place. So let me grab the hot glue. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and fasten it on the nut on this way. Now, if you happen to store this in your car, you know, and it's a hot area, you know, you could have a problem with this. I have before myself. So, you know, I would steer away from doing that. If you're going to be storing it, you think, in a real hot area, I would not put hot glue to hold this nut on. I'd put something like, you know, CA or epoxy. Okay? So let's let this dry. While this is drying, let's go ahead and do a recap. Get all the strings out. We put our cross members here, and we have all of our screws in, and they're tightened up. We have our arms put on, our adjustment arms put on, and we have all the screws in here for our landing gear. Okay, we've adjusted these to 45 degrees, and while this is finishing up to dry, we're going to go around and tighten these up really good. Now you're going to have to push down on it pretty good and just keep tightening it up and keep pressure on it so it doesn't strip out the screw. And when you tighten it up really good like this, it'll make this really tight and kind of finishes the job off. But you can see how much I'm tightening it up still. Just, you know, push down on the screwdriver. Don't put your hands underneath there, because if it slips off, you're going to be in trouble. But just push down on the screwdriver really good and tighten it up till it doesn't go anymore. And there you go. That's doing good. And we'll do the same thing on the last one. Okay, so these were the 5 1/4 inch pieces. Again, They're smooth on each side or flush, flush, flush. These are 5-inch pieces, 3-inch pieces. And your frame is built. I think it's pretty dry. Now, one thing you can do with this also is trim the screw. It's pretty long. I normally cut these down with a pair of bolt cutters, or wire cutters rather, and I'll cut it off. You know, you can do what you want, but I normally cut, you know, about this much off. You can leave it this length, it doesn't hurt anything, but I'll show you. It's about how much I cut off. Okay, and it works real well. There you go. So your frame is completed. You're ready for motors. Again, motor mounts are on, everything's screwed in, they're tightened down very well. Your screws installed here for your lid. All the screws are in. You're in good shape. Let's get some motors on. See you next time. This is Danny with QuadLugs, and we're installing the motors on the Box Squad. Of course, we get 4 motors with the stem kit, and they're 2212, 1400 kV, and we're using SunnySky motors. Our motor mounts take an X mount to connect them to the motor, and they come with the motor, so that's a good deal. Let's go ahead and get one of them installed. And first we'll go ahead and install the X mount. If you notice, there's a beveled edge here and it's flat on this side. We want the beveled edge away from the motor because the screws that we're going to use have a bevel and they fit into the X mount there, and they wind up flush when they're installed. So you'll also notice that there's some holes that are wider than the others, so you need to spin them around until they match. And there you go. And again, the bevel edge is on top. And you can tell if you have it in wrong because the screw is going to be sticking out a whole bunch. So let's go ahead and put this on. You should really use Loctite on the screws. It keeps them from backing out. But I'll be real honest with you, I don't use it like I should. And I really don't have a problem with them. So, you know, the way the X mounts mount onto our motor mounts, it kind of keeps them, you know, from coming out. But just wanted you to know how to do it the right way, and that's to put Loctite on it. Okay. We'll finish getting this installed. And then you want to tighten them up good. Okay, this is a number 1, and I think I'm going to get a little bit bigger Phillips screwdriver. And you know when you have the right one because they fit in there better. And so we'll tighten them up really well. And then we'll check them again. Good. Now the props, where they mount onto the motor, we're going to install this piece. And you'll see there's 3 screws that go into there. And so you have to line them up. It's not hard. And I think we're good there. And we're using the smaller screws. You're going to have a few extra. That's good. Keep them. And you'll have some extra of both. So, but here we're using the smaller screws. And again, just 2 different screws here, so you can't go wrong. Okay. Okay, and just make sure they're tight. There. Put the washer back on, and we'll go over where they go when we do the prop install. But we'll put everything together. These are going to be your extra screws, and we'll save those. Now to install it, the X-mount, we use tie bands to put them on. And one reason for that, a couple reasons. One reason is that you can change the motor out very quickly. The other is that if you hit it really hard, in other words, a bad crash, these zip ties will pop and the motor will come off before it starts tearing up, too much of the motor. So the downside, you'll have to change or replace a tie strap or a zip tie. The good side is that it'll save your motor wear and tear. So it'd be advisable to go ahead and get you some 4-inch long zip ties and keep a few of them on hand as part of your tools when you go flying. You can get them at Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, most every place. You can get them online. So you'll be looking for 4-inch, 18-pound zip ties. They're very inexpensive. I'd go ahead and pick up a few. You'll be prepared in case you have a crash and you have to repair it. I normally put them, you can put them, or install the motor this way and have the wires on top, or I normally put it like this, and the wires are going to wind up going like this. And that's the way I normally do it. It kind of keeps everything clean here, keeps the wires on the side. In case you have a prop, a crash, your prop hits the top of it here, you could cut your wiring. I do this, and it kind of keeps it out of everything. So I'm going to put it on this way. That's the way I normally do. Let's get some of the zip ties that came with it. And again, pick some of these up. You'll have them as spares. And if you have a crash, you're prepared. So we just put that through, and we'll leave them a little bit loose. These holes, the holes we have in the motor mount, they're set up so they can handle a few of these X mounts, and believe it or not, some of them are a little bit different in spacing. So they're a little tight sometimes, but the way to do this is just lift up the motor like that and leave the zip ties loose like that until you get them all in, and then you tighten them up and it works great. If not, you may have time getting them into the holes, or lining them up. But this way you can see it's real easy to put on. Takes just a couple seconds. And let's go ahead and a couple different ways to tighten them up. This is actually how I normally do it. You can just pull like that and it tightens it up. And the same thing here. And just pull them against each other and it tightens them up. You can also use, you know, a pair of needle nose to do it. But I'll tell you, you know, you can do, you know, whichever way you want, obviously. But just doing that number like that, it does a real good job of tightening it up. Works really good. And then I cut these real close to where the connector is. And the reason I do that, it holds plenty good like this. I've been doing this for years like this. But you'll see that if you don't cut them close and you do this here, this right here gets really sharp on you, and you know it can cut you or whatever. So I just go real close to it like this, right up against it. You can see the difference, and it's nice. It's not gonna, you know, stab you with it. That's the way I do it. Works good. No problems at all. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and you'll see how this turns out when the motors, when we finish the installation. This wiring is going to come through here, and it looks really nice this way. So I'm going to go ahead and get these other motors on and get them strapped on. It's too easy. You don't need to watch me doing this. So I'll go ahead and get these others done, and I'll see you in the next video. And I think we're doing the ESC next. We're going to install it. See you next time. This is Danny with QuadLugs, and we're installing the 4-in-1 ESC. So we have our box quad here, and this is our 4-in-1 ESC. This is our new ESCs that we're starting to use. It's actually going to go inside the box instead of on the bottom like it used to. So comes with the wiring already soldered on. The only thing you'll have to do is solder this plug on. This does not come pre-soldered. So whichever battery you're using and whichever you know, plug that you like or prefer, you'll have to install this or solder this on. I've already put mine on. It's an XT60, and we're ready to go. With the 4-in-1 comes a couple items. Of course, it tells you about it here, and you also will get 2 sets of wiring harnesses to connect your ESC to your flight controller. One has the clips already on, and the other is for soldering onto the controller if you choose to do. We're going to use this one now, and this is a capacitor. We're not going to install that now. We'll get into that later on. You'll notice on here there are some auxiliary pads here. So with the pads you can furnish auxiliary power out 5 volts or 12 volts. We'll get into that later. Okay, so we're going to put this plug in, and if you notice, you know, there's only one way this will go in, so don't try to force it, but it has little tabs here too that matches here, and there's only one way to put it in. So don't force it, it should go in pretty easy. And a good way to tell is that if you'll notice the pins are toward, you know, one side, either this side or that side, and they're toward that side. And if you'll see the holes here that the pins fit in, it's toward this side and not the other. So it's going to go in like this. And then you want to go ahead and push it in. Okay, and you'll tell that it's all the way in. And this is how it should look. So on the 4-in-1 ESC, it's listed as ESC 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to install it just like this, and they're not going to match up to the motors, and we'll go over that in a minute, but we'll correct that here, so no big worry. Okay, so we're ready to install that. This comes with the ESC, comes with our kit, or if you buy the ESC separate, it will come with these items here. The nylon screws are like 28 millimeters, and the spacers, also nylon, are like 4 millimeters. So anyway, that comes with it, and the washers. So we'll go ahead and put a washer on each one, and we'll go ahead and put here. Okay. These holes here are for our old way of mounting the ESC, which was here in this location. We're going to have these cut into the box for maybe 6 to 8 months more. Then these are going to wind up going away, and you'll only have these for installing. So for right now, you'll have the option to go either way. So let's go ahead and open it up. We've already installed our motors in a previous video. And this is how this is going to be installed. Now before we put it in, just so we can see, this is going to be motor number 1, 2, 3, 4 with this particular controller that we're using. We're using a CC3D. Now depending on which controller you use, if you're going to use a different type of controller, that would maybe change, but for us now, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now when you put this in, it's going to go in just like this, and this is going to be ESC4, and we're going to write this down. So motor number 1 is going to be going to ESC4. So we're going to put motor ESC, motor 1 to ESC4. Now you can put this anywhere as you want. I just like putting it here, easy to get to. Motor number 2 is going to be going to ESC2. Motor number 3 is going to be going to ESC number 1. Motor number 4 is going to ESC3. So when we go to hook up the controller, this is what we're going to use on where you know, the ESC is going to be mounted, or how they're going to be connected. Okay, we're ready to install our spacers, our nylon spacers. They're like 4 millimeters long. But first we're going to put the washers on. All of our screws are M3s. Okay, we'll put the spacers. Now we're ready for the ESC. And we're going to slide on the ESC. We'll put the other spacer on top. And on top of this, our controller is going to go there. And we'll go ahead and install the wires into the holes going to each motor. Let me move these out of the way. So we're going to go ahead and connect the motors. The wiring doesn't matter which color, just connect any 3 up. And then the controller install and setup, we'll go ahead and check rotation on the motors and change the rotation if we need to at that point. Again, to change rotation, all you have to do is change any two wires. Just exchange them. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get these put in. Okay, your ESC is installed. The controller is going to go right on top of this, and that'll be our next video. Okay, we'll see you in the next one. This is Danny with QuadLugs, and we're going to install the CC3D controller. Pretty simple process. We have a CC3D controller with a case on it being repurposed. We'll go ahead and take the case off. Some of them that we'll be furnishing with our box quad kits or either with our box quad stem kit may come with the case on it or the case off of it already. So if it does come with the case, you just take these 4 screws off. And I would suggest to save the case. You never know when you'll want to put it back into it and, you know, install it on something else. But we'll go ahead and take the 4 screws out. And when you do, there it is. Okay. And this is how we're going to use it with this install now. This is where your motors are going to tie in or connect to the controller. And looking at it this way, it's on the case. If you get it with the case, it's listed here, the motors, you know, 1 through 6. And here it's listed, or it says, you know, the orientation of the pins. Here is the signal, and then the plus or the positive, the power, and then the negative, which is the ground. And the way this is oriented is that the top would be your signal, and then the middle would be the power or positive, and the bottom would be your ground or the negative. Okay. Also, this is where we're going to plug in the USB to connect it to the computer, right there. Okay. And this plug here is going to be used for our wiring harness to the receiver. And we're going to do that when we install the receiver. There's a couple of different receivers you can use, satellite receiver and even an S-bus. That's what's pretty unique about this particular CC3D that we use. But we'll get into that whenever we install our receiver, and that'll be on the next video. But for right now, we're going to connect our motor wires to the ESC, and we're going to get it installed onto our stack. There's an arrow here, and that's it right there. And that's the direction of flight on how you would normally install the controller. This is going to be front of the quad. This is the back. The arrow's facing forward toward the direction of flight. But we're going to install it 90 degrees to the left so that we have easy access to the USB that we'll be connecting in the future to put it on the computer to do the setup on this. None of the motors are going to work. Nothing's really going to work until we plug in the USB and pull up the computer program and go through that setup. So don't be alarmed if you turn on your transmitter, nothing's going to work. That's going to come in the future after we do that. Okay, but for right now, we're going to get this installed. If you look at your wiring diagram that came with your ESC, this is the wiring harness here, this particular one right here. And here it says negative, +5, That's your power, and it says ESC 1, 2, 3, 4, and then VBAT. We're not going to use VBAT on this particular one. We're going to tape it up so it doesn't, short out against anything. We're going to use it in the future, not now though. So we're going to go ahead and hook up our wires to the controller. Again, remembering that this is motor number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay? So, again, we wrote this down here. Motor number 1, which is here, is going to go to ESC 4. So, the first white wire is 1. The second white wire is 2. The third is 3. And the fourth is 4. So motor number 1 is going to go to ESC 4. And the top is the signal, middle is positive, bottom is ground. So we're going to go to the signal, which is the top. So this is going to be on motor 1. Okay. Motor number 2 is going to be ESC 2. So again, the first white wire is 1, second white wire is 2. So we'll hook that up to 2. Motor number 3 is going to ESC 1, and this is it here. The first white wire is ESC 1, so we're going to put that here. Pretty simple. Okay, and we have a red and black wire here, and we're feeding power to the controller. Motor number 4 is going to ESC 3, so that should be our third white wire. And let's just make sure, and I'm going to kind of put this through here, and indeed it is the first white wire, second, third white wire. Okay, so we're going to connect that, and we're done. So we're going to set this on top. We already have our spacers on, and we're going to put this on top, and there we go. Makes a nice neat job. Now I'm going to go ahead and get a piece of tape, and I'm just going to, we could take this wire out of the harness, but like I was saying earlier, I'm going to use this on something else, or we're going to use this port, and we'll do that in the future. So I'm going to do that, keep it from shorting out on anything, and we're going to tuck that away right there. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and put the nuts on. And you kind of want to be careful, you know, you're going to have some exposed electronics. So if you use something to tighten the nuts up, and you're not careful with it, you can, you know, dislodge some of the parts here, and of course it wouldn't work. So a good way to do this is just to hold the nut with your finger and use a Phillips screwdriver and tighten it up. And that way you'll never run into a problem of you know, messing up the board. So you don't have to tighten them up too tight, and we'll snug them all up first, and then we'll do the finished tightening. Okay, so doing it with the rest of them. Now we're on the last one. And the only thing I'm doing is with one finger holding the nut on there so it won't spin, and tightening up the screws. And you'll see that it's kind of pulling it in a little bit. You don't want to go too much further than that. That'll do a pretty good job. And we'll see. We'll try it here and see. It's moving a little bit. So let's tighten it up a little bit more. Just, you know, kind of be gentle with it. And you'll get it to a point where they're all tight. Okay. There you go. And now if you try to move it, it's nice and tight. Okay? Good job. And that's what it'll look like when it's all done. And again, it pulls it in a little bit, not very much. And you can tell it makes a nice, neat job. Okay? So now we have our motors tied in to the controller. The controller's installed. This is where we're going to tie in our USB in the future. We have our spacers in, so nothing's touching. If you do not put these spacers, you'll want to touch the other and you'll have a problem. It'll short out. So you have your spacers in, this tightened up, nice, we're done. So now we're ready to install our receiver. That's going to be next. We'll talk to you in a bit. This is Danny with QuadLugs, and we're going to be installing the receiver in the box quad. We're using a Spectrum receiver. The receiver may vary. You know, there's like the AR600, the 610. There's quite a few different receivers and different makes also. But today we're putting this one in. One thing that's pretty universal to all of them is that we're going to be connecting to the throttle, the aileron, the elevator, the rudder, and the gear are in auxiliary channel, which is going to control the modes. So that's pretty much universal to all of them. And also you'll have to bind it. This one takes a binding plug, and it may vary. But again, when you have your manual for your transmitter and your receiver, it's really good to go ahead and go over the instructions and go through the manual well. So we're going to be using the Spectrum today, and we'll continue on. Now, in the previous videos, you installed, of course, the frame, the motors, the ESC, and the controller. And with the controller, we're using a CC3D, came some wiring. Okay? So we're going to open this up. And it came with a couple of different wiring harnesses and a sticky pad here, which we're not using. But save it. I mean, it's good to have for future. You have a couple of different wiring harnesses. We're going to use this one, and that's what it looks like. This one right here is a little bit smaller, if you notice the connector. This connector is wide. This connector is narrow. There's more wires on this than this. We are not going to use this. This would be used for a different application. So again, we're not going to use this one. It's an extra. This is what we're going to use. And if you look at your wiring harness, you'll see this. You have a white, red, and black. Again, black is your common or your negative. Red is your positive or power. And white's going to be your signal. And you see it all hooked up on one. And this one is going to be used for our throttle. And this will furnish power to the receiver. So we're going to go over to throttle. And if you look here, you'll see throttle is the second terminal. And you'll also see it's listed right here. And it looked like a little hat sign here, and a plus and a negative. So this is going to be your signal. This is going to be your positive. This is going to be your negative. Okay? So this is going to be our throttle. This is the first one, the first wire after your power wire. And it's going to go in just like this. So we determine the signals here, positive, negative. Signal, positive, negative. And again, we're going to hook it up on the throttle. Now again, no matter which receiver you're using, you'll always want to hook this particular wire up to your throttle. And you'll have to determine, you know, where the throttle is. It may be in a different place on a receiver, a different receiver that you're using, but you'll always hook it up on the throttle. So this is the next wire. And this is going to be your aileron. So again, we're going to hook this up to aileron, and there it is right there. And the signal is going to be on that side, just as we're doing here. The next wire is going to be your elevator. Okay? And again, no matter where it's at on the receiver, if it's a different receiver, you want to hook this up on the elevator. The next is going to be your rudder. Once again, find out where the rudder is located on your receiver and put it there. The next wire is going to be your auxiliary or your mode switch, and for the spectrum we're going to use the next one over, which is gear, or it may be listed if you're using a different one as an auxiliary channel. Anyway, here it says gear, and we're going to put it there. So you have your throttle, aileron, elevator, rudder, and your mode switch, which here is being hooked up to gear, or if you have a different one, or a different make you have, it would be the auxiliary one. Okay? So there you are. That's all there is to it. You'll have an extra wire, and you see here I taped it up, but it can be either taped up like this and use it for later, or you can remove it. We're going to go ahead and remove this one. Super easy to do. You can use a knife or a pen, and you'll see the tabs here. So here we'll lift up on the tab, gently pull the wire, and there it comes out. Okay, and we're gonna, you can save this if you want. I would recommend it. And there you are. What I normally do is hold it so you don't break any wires, twist it a little bit, and I call that wire management. Make it look nice. Okay, now we're going to plug this into the controller, and earlier I had mentioned that this is going to be the location of it. So you'll notice that the pins, it goes in one way, and the holes on this pin are up toward the top and furthest from the bottom. And if you notice the pins here in your other side of the connector, the pins are toward the top and furthest from the bottom. So that's how we're going to go in with it. You don't want to force it. If it doesn't want to go, you may have it turned upside down and just try it again. You gently push on it and you'll see it starts to go in. And then we'll make sure it's pushed in all the way. And there you go. Now we're going to install the receiver, and we're going to go ahead and put it here, and that's where I'm choosing to do it. You can put it in a different place if you want. This is a real good location for it. It's out of the way. We're going to have our Velcro installed here a little bit later. This is where our battery is going to go, so it keeps it clear. So let's go ahead and get a couple of sticky pads. We're going to put them on our receiver. And you'll notice that you have two wires coming off. Some receivers may be long, the wiring may be, the antennas may be longer, some of them are a little bit shorter. But either way, we want one going this way and we want one going this way, and it'll give us there at right angles, great for reception. Again, you can read up on your receiver and it gives you that information. So we're going to leave this one down below like that. We're going to put it right here. We do bind the receiver. We're going to do that in a little while. We're going to put the binding plug here. So whenever you put this in place, you may want to make sure that the binding plug is on top so it's easy to get to. Now we have one of our wires going this way underneath, and this one we're going to put this way, and that's going to give us our right angles. Let me get a piece of tape. And we're going to go ahead and put this in place now. There we go. This will work really good. We're going to put another piece on. There we go. Your antennas are now placed. Again, remembering this one, and there's one underneath going this way. We're at right angles. So you're in good shape. Next step, we'll bind it. We'll do that next time. Your receiver's installed, wired, ready to go. This is Danny. We'll see you next time. This is Danny with QuadLugs, and we're going to power up the quad for the very first time. We built the frame, we put the motors on, we installed them. We installed the ESC, we installed the controller, we installed the receiver. Everything is wired in. We've double checked everything. We installed the battery plug, and we made sure that positive is going to red, negative is going to ground. Want to double check that. The battery we're going to be using today is this one. It may vary, the plugs may vary, but everything else remains the same. Negative and positive, black and red. We want to make sure that they're matching. So before we plug it in, and there's one way that it's going to plug in, and this holds true for most all of your connectors. So you want to place them just as you're going to be plugging it in. Verify that. And when you do that, you'll see that the black or the negative is matching up. That's good. The red is matching up to the red. The positive is good. So you want to double check. If it's this way, when you're matching them up, wrong. This is bad. Make sure they're matching up. You've checked everything else is done, ready. I would hold them just in case you see any smoke or anything looks odd. Unplug it quickly. Let's put power to it. Everything looks good. You're going to have a green and a blue light on your controller. It's just saying that it's ready, meaning that it's ready to connect to the computer for the first time to go ahead and program your controller. That's coming. But we're just checking to make sure that we have power and there's no problems. Success. This is Danny with QuadLugs, and we're binding the receiver on our box quad. We're using a DXe Spectrum, and let's get to it. We'll have to, a little bit of information first, I guess, on the DXe. Nothing special has been done to the receiver. It's out of the box. Put batteries in it, and we're ready to go. Again, the switch here, you have arm, disarm, so you want to make sure that it's armed. And we'll go over more of this whenever we fly it. One other thing to take note of is this is the mode switch, and we'll be getting more into that and setting it up whenever we connect the computer to the controller and do that setup. What we're going to be looking at today is the bind switch, and this is it right here. And what we'll be doing, we'll put the bind plug into the receiver, and then we're going to apply power. You'll see there's an indicator light that's going to start flashing rapidly. At that point, we'll hold the bind switch and we'll turn on the transmitter. And you'll see that the light on the receiver goes from blinking to solid, and that'll indicate that we're bound. All the switches, put them up or away from you, and you're good. Pull the throttle all the way down, and you're good. So we're going to go ahead and put the bind plug. It came with the receiver, and it goes in this terminal here. It's marked bind, and that's where you want to go. So we'll go ahead and put it in. Let's get our battery, and we're going to apply power. If you notice here, you'll see the receiver flashing rapidly. Okay? Okay, so we're going to hold the bind button down, and we're going to put the power on, or put the transmitter on. So now you'll see that the receiver quit blinking and it's a solid light. Go ahead and release your bind button and you're bound. It's just that easy. So let's go ahead and unplug the battery. We're going to double check this. Let's turn the transmitter off. Let's take the bind button out, or the bind plug out. This is really critical. If you leave it in, you got to plug it in, it'll be in the bind mode again. So make sure you take it out, put it in a safe place. We'll go ahead and turn the transmitter on first this time. And we'll plug in the quad. Steady light. We're bound. Everything's checking out. Everything's working fine. Always remember, a very good habit is to unplug the quad first, then turn the transmitter off. When you're plugging it in, turn the transmitter on first, then plug it in. So you always want transmitter on first, last off. Good habit to get into. So let's go ahead and unplug it, turn the transmitter off, and we're done. You're bound. We're ready to move on. We're going to download the LibrePilot program so we can do the setup on your CC3D. So go to LibrePilot.org, and this is what you're going to pull up. Go to Downloads. And here we'll get the latest release, 16.09. So here's where you can scroll down and download your program. So choose your liking, and this is where you'll do it. It's real handy, I guess, or real good for you to go ahead and go through everything, and that way, if you run into any issues, after you have the program pulled up, you can go to this area right here to help you get some answers. But I would make sure that I have the drivers picked when you go to download. Okay, so I'm on Windows, and I'll go here. I'll have to wait a little while. Okay, now that it's downloaded, we'll continue. And we want English. And here, we got to check the drivers. And once again, we'll wait for it to be completed. Okay, now we'll continue. And we're finished. Okay, your program has been loaded, and this is what you'll see. First of all, we've gone through the frame build. We've installed the motors. We've installed the ESC. We've installed the controller. We've installed the receiver. We've applied power for the first time to the quad. And we bound, or we did the binding between the transmitter and the receiver. So now we're ready to go ahead and program the controller or set up the controller. Until this point, none of the motors would work. Nothing's really working except for a blue and a green light maybe flashing. We're going to go ahead and plug in the USB into the controller. And now we'll plug the USB into the computer. So now you may see that a few lights are populating here, and that's just saying that the system is connected, and so far it's in good health. Everything's looking okay. Okay, so we're going to go to vehicle setup next. Good to read along with this. I'll, tell you a little bit of what's going on, but take your time when you're doing it and go through, read through everything. This right here, we're basically saying, be careful, no props. Next, let's go ahead and upgrade. Now what we're doing here, if you'll read it, we're upgrading the firmware on the controller to the most current that they have. So we'll wait here, and when it's done in this area right here, it'll say next and continue on. In this, you do not want to get in a hurry with this. Take your time with it. Read it through. This is the fun part. You're coming right up to the end. You're getting close to flying it. You may get this message here. Don't worry about it. And here you'll see it says next, ready to move on. This is just telling you a little bit about which board that you have, control board that you have. And we'll hit next here. Okay, this is wanting to know which receiver that you have. We're using a PWM. There's a lot of information out there on all the different types of receivers. One of the main things is that your transmitter is going to have to match up to the receiver. Anyway, this is what we're using, PWM. Next. Of course, what type of vehicle? We're using a multi-rotor. Next. And this is where you pick, you know, the quad that you have, or the vehicle that you have, rather. This is, of course, what you have. Quadcopter X, just to show you a few of the others. You'll know fairly easy if you're in the wrong place. So, this is what we want. It pulls this up naturally, but you need to verify that. Next. The ESCs, we're going to be using the Rapid ESC here. Once you pick your receiver and your ESC that you're using, it gives you a little wiring diagram. If you'll notice, this is exactly how we wired it in. This is the wire that we're not using, and this is it. If you're using this in a teaching environment, of course, you can print this out, and it's real handy. So we'll go ahead and close this. So this is just another double check that you know, the way you wired it in is indeed correct to what you've picked so far. Here we're going to tell the controller what's level. And you want to make sure that you're on a level surface, and go ahead and hit calculate. So when this is happening, I would make sure that, you know, you don't touch anything. Just leave it be. And quickly, it's done. We'll move on. We're going to sync up the motors to the ESC. So go ahead and read this, and again, no props. Click off the 3 boxes. What we're going to do next is that we're going to hit start or press start. Have your battery ready and have your battery fully charged, because when we hit start, we're going to, after that, we're going to go ahead and plug in the battery to the quad. You'll get a series of tones. Whenever they stop, click stop here, and you'll get another series of tones. And if everything goes good, then it'll say that it's healthy, it's been synced together. So we'll go ahead and click start. We're going to plug in the battery. That's the series of tones we were talking about. Now we're going to hit stop. This is telling you that your ESC and motors are synced up. So they've been calibrated. Now we're going to go to next. By the way, if you hear anything other than what the sounds that you just heard on here, you may have a problem with, you know, your ESC or wiring. But, you know, you want to make sure that you're getting this same series of tones on this particular ESC. Now, each ESC is going to be a little bit different tone. You know, if we're using a different type of ESC, you'll get a different type of tone or a different series of tones. For this particular one, we're using the Spedix 4-in-1. If you've been following, again, this series of build videos, this is the tone you'll hear. Again, if you hear it, if you have a different ESC installed, set of ESCs installed, whether it be a 401 or separate, it's going to be a different tone possibly. Okay, so we're going to move on. Again, remove the propellers. And if you remember the build that we just finished, this is the front of the quad, this is the back. So front, this is motor number 1, 2, 3, 4, just the way we did. So now we're going to spin up the motors for the first time. We're going to hit start. And when we move this slider, this motor here should start turning. Okay. It's turning, and we're going clockwise. Great. Now we're going to set our minimum, and that's where it will remain turning steady. So let's go to about here, 1037. Okay. We'll hit stop. We're going to go to next. And here we'll hit start again. This is going to be motor number 2. Move the slider. That is indeed motor number 2 turning. And it is going counterclockwise. Great. We're going to go ahead and you can use the arrow keys after you've moved the slider a little bit. You can just, use the arrow keys after that. So to set define, adjustments on it. But we're going to again go to 1037 on this one. Next motor. This should be the motor. We're going to go ahead and hit start. Move the slider. Again, this is motor number 3 turning, and this is turning counterclockwise. So let's go ahead and stop it, and we're going to go ahead and move any 2 wires, and we're doing that. And that will change your rotation. So let's go ahead and hit start again. Again, this is motor number 3, and now it's turning clockwise. It matches. Cool. So let's go ahead and set our minimum, and we'll hit stop. We're going to try out motor number 4. Let's move the slider. Again, this is motor number 4, and it is turning the right direction. It's going counterclockwise. And let's go ahead and set our minimum, and we're done. So now we've checked motor 1, 2, 3, and 4. We verified that indeed each motor is that motor that's supposed to be turning, and that each one is going in a proper direction. If you go to test motor number 1 and actually motor number 2 comes on, it's just telling you that the motors are wired in the wrong location on your controller. So when we wired in the motors to the controller, and we had motor number 1, 2, 3, and 4 that we connected, if they're not coming on in the proper sequence that we've just tested, it's as simple as just moving one of your motor wires. So verify that. You may want to go back to the video and just make sure that was done correctly. Again, verifying that all the motors are operating in the proper direction and also operating in the proper location. So we'll move on. There's some preset PIDs in the controller, or that you can pick to load into the controller. QuadLugs flies very, very good on generic QuadX setting. You can adjust PIDs later on and fine tune it a little bit more, but I'll tell you, I've flown these a lot, and with this setting here, it flies extremely well. I think you'll be more than satisfied the way this flies. So let's move on. Okay, so we're going to, again, read this and we'll save it. Okay, the setup on your quad is done, on the controller is done. Now we're going to go through the transmitter wizard. Again, nothing's going to work right or work until this is done. So let's go ahead. The battery has been plugged in since we plugged it in when we did the ESC calibration. Now we're going to unplug the quad. Okay. And we're going to pick Transmitter Setup Wizard. And again, this is safety. And it's just saying that it's going to be disarmed the whole time until we tell it that we want to arm it at the very end. So let's go ahead and turn your transmitter on. Let's go ahead and plug in the quad. Again, you're hearing those tones. Now it's saying it's fine. A little bit different set of tones from when you calibrated the ESC. That was during the calibration period. Now the tones that you're currently getting when you plug in the battery, this is all proper. So here, go ahead and read again, and we're going to hit next. This is what we want right here. You would think that you want to pick helicopter maybe. You don't. You really want fixed wing or quad. So there, you're correct there. Hit next. We're flying mode 2. That's in mainly in the States. There's some people flying mode 1, and especially if you go overseas, you know, a lot of it's mode 1 there. But here, mode 2. And again, if you read this, this applies to you. This is where you should be. Now here we're going to hit next. What we're going to be doing is, you know, letting the transmitter know the settings on the controller. In other words, when we move these sticks, it's just going to verify and set those points into the controller so the transmitter and the controller are synced together. So here it's asking you to move your throttle. Okay, you'll see that it took it. It knows that's the throttle. Now we're going to move the aileron, and it took it. And we're moving the pitch, and it took it. Here we're moving the yaw or rudder, and it took it. Now we're going to be moving the mode switch on our transmitter, and that was it. Here it took it. These switches here, there's going to be 4 more. We're not going to be using those. So we hit next or skip, 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 skip. Okay, now here we're going to center the transmitter to match what we're seeing here. So throttle is going to be centered and rudder, and the aileron and pitch are going to be centered here. We're also going to take this switch here, our mode switch, and move it to the middle. You know, there's 3 different locations there for your switch. We're going to move it to the middle. Okay? So the only thing we're doing here is that we're matching. Okay? So we hit next. Now here, if you see going all crazy, it's going to want you to go to all the 4 corners, extreme 4 corners of the sticks, and also the mode switch here. So let's get started, and you'll see it here. It's going to all the 4 corners. Now it may be in reverse. We're going to check that in a minute. Just go to all the 4 corners, and you can see me moving them there, here. Okay, and do that 2 or 3, 4 times even. It won't hurt. Okay, and then bring the throttle back down. Now we're going to do this one, and you'll see it moving to all the 4 corners. Okay, and now we're going to do the switch. There may be a little bit of lag time between the transmitter and the computer that you're, or you know, the screen here that you're watching, and that's okay. There will not be a lag time when you're flying it. Okay, so this is working via the switch. So now what we're doing is that we're using our transmitter in our hands to make sure that it's matching what we're seeing here. Let's go next. So let's move the throttle up. That's correct. Now we're checking the correct direction, make sure everything's moving the right way. We're moving our transmitter to the left, the rudder to the left, and you can see it's moving the opposite way. Let's go ahead and hit reverse here, and now we move it to the left. It's correct. We're moving the transmitter right, and that's correct. Now we're going to move the aileron to the left, and that's backwards. So let's reverse roll, Here we go. Now that's left and that's right. So that's correct. We're pulling the pitch or the elevator back and it's going up. So that's wrong. So let's go ahead and reverse that. Now we're pulling it back on the transmitter in our hand and it's matching. Now we're pushing forward and it's matching. So the only thing we're doing now is making sure that the transmitter in your hand, when you move that particular stick that you're moving, that it's going the same way. Everything is matching from your sticks in your hands to what you see visually on the screen. Okay, that's correct. And all of this is correct. So we're in good shape. Let's hit next. We've been doing a lot of double checking in our setup, in our build, and this is again where we're double checking. It just wants you here to make sure throttle's up, throttle's down. Again, we're moving the transmitter in our hand to match. We move rudder to the left, rudder to the right. Pull the throttle back down. We know that's all correct. We're going to move the aileron to the left. There it is. Right. There it is. Pitch or elevator down. The same up. And everything's matching. So make sure you're happy with that. And then on your mode switch, we're moving all three positions. And you can see it working. Okay. Now let's go ahead. And if you've noticed, I normally like to have all my switches pushed forward. We're going to look at that in a minute, and I'll show you how to change that if you want to. Let's hit next. This is where we're going to choose our arming method. So let's go here, and we're going to pick yaw right. Now what that means, let's go ahead and save this first. And this you have to save. So we've picked yaw right. And what that means is that when we go to arm the quad or the controller, the throttle has to be all the way down and rudder or yaw all the way to the right. Whenever I do this, this is going to be the only time you're going to hear a voice command coming from the computer saying that it's armed. After we are done and we pull it off the computer, you'll never hear that again. When you arm it, it'll be armed. The best way to do it is to test it with a little bit of throttle, and we'll do that after a while. I'll show you how we do that. So first time to arm it, we're all the way down on throttle, yaw to the right.
Armed.
Now it's telling you everything has worked. It's armed. So let's give it a little bit of throttle, and they're turning. Now you'll notice that these motors, when you pull the throttle back, they stop pretty quick. The ESC that we're using, the ESC is telling these motors to stop. This is a very, very good ESC that we've gone to, and when the motors stop like that, it helps out a whole lot in doing, special maneuvers. Later on, when you start doing flips and all that stuff, this comes to be a big asset whenever you start doing all of that. That's yet, though, in the future. But I just want you to be aware of that so you're not alarmed. That's what it does. So if you want to arm the quad, again,
armed,
yaw right, and it's armed. If you want to disarm it, yaw left, it's disarmed. Another way to disarm it is that if you arm it and you let it set for maybe, I think it's set on like 30 seconds, and that's it right there. It's going to disarm itself, and that's safety. So if you arm it and you don't move the throttle or anything, it's going to disarm itself. You'll have to arm it again. It's very good. Okay, so that's done. Let's finish the setup. We still have a few items to do. We're going to check failsafe after a while. This is very critical. If your failsafe isn't working, you want to find out why it's not working. You do not want to fly it without failsafe. What that means is that if you lose connection between the receiver and the transmitter, whether it's a battery issue with the transmitter, or you go out of range, or you're having reception problems. If you don't have a fail-safe, it's going to continue on until the battery runs out. So it could be a very bad situation if that happened. So the way we set it up is that fail-safe just shuts down everything. Will it crash? Yes. It's better than having it fly on. You don't know where it went. You don't know who's in the way. You don't want that. So fail-safe, we'll check that in a minute. We want to make sure the motor's shut down and it comes down as fast as possible. We don't want it to go on. Okay, we'll check that in a minute. The modes. Now on the switch that we've been flipping there, the mode switch, you can see it moving. And again, there's a little delay here when you're actually using it unplugged for the computer. There will be no delay. So if you move this switch, we'll move it into the middle position. There it is. And you see it moving here. We'll move to the next position, and you'll see it here. Again, I like all the switches pushed away from me. If you want to change that, I'll show you in a second how to do that. But for right now, we need to set these, and we're going to use attitude, rate, and we're going to attitude, rate. Here we're going to use attitude, rate, and let's hit save. Pretty obvious what we're doing is that no matter where you put the mode switch, you're going to be in attitude, and that's going to be the safest place for you to learn how to fly. When you get really used to it, you feel comfortable with it, you can start changing these settings here and get a lot more aggressive. And you can also do some settings here and be a lot more aggressive in your flying and start doing flips and all that stuff. For right now, you want to stay here, okay? So no matter what mode you're in, you'll see it's in self-leveling and attitude. You can do a lot in this setting range. For a while, let it do all you want to do, trust me. So let's go here. This is just showing you your movements of your transmitter. I'm moving a transmitter right now, and you can see what it's doing on the program. Now, if we move right now I have the mode switch all the way to the front. If you move it in the middle, you'll see it here. If I push it all the way forward, you see it here. Again, I normally like to have all the switches pushed forward. It's usually a setting where everybody wants to be when you turn on the transmitter. So in order for this to happen, we want to reverse this and this. So we were 1901 here, and we were 1911 here. So let's just change this to 1911 and 1901. I'm sorry, 1101. Let's hit save. You don't want to mess with any of these here. We've already set these in the wizard, so you don't want to mess with these at all. The switch, there was no option to reverse this. So this is where we need to do it if you want to do that. So you can see now the mode switch is all the way forward. It's moved it here. This is in the middle. Mode switch pulled all the way towards you. So now you'll see that that's been reversed. So if you like it that way, there you are. Again, don't mess with any of these. So let's start going down our list here. Outputs, again, we're just touching the settings on this. It'll fly, on the controller will fly extremely well the way we're set up, or the way we will be set up when we're finished. You can get into this as much as you want to after you gain some experience in flying, you get used to it. I'll tell you, you'd be surprised what you can do with this controller. It is amazing. So here, we're not going to be doing anything with it. Okay, next here. If you remember, we put the controller in and we turned it 90 degrees. So when we said we were going to take care of that later on, it's later on. We're doing it now. So we'll go to yaw. If you remember, we turned it 90 degrees. So let's put in here 90 and let's save it. Being that we changed this to compensate for the controller being off 90 degrees, we're going to find that our level calibration that we did is not going to be accurate, and I'm going to show you that now. So let's go to flight data. You'll see that this is really not accurate, okay? The horizon is way off. So let's go back, and again, the quad should be on a level surface. Let's hit level. And again, that's completed, and it'll read this right here, and it'll let you know also what we're doing. Let's hit save. Now this is going to take a little while to settle in, but you'll see how it's already much better, and it takes just a little bit and the horizon will settle up. But let's go ahead and check and make sure that our quad is all moving in the right direction. So we're going to lift the back of the quad up, so we want the front of the quad facing down, and you'll see that's correct. The horizon we've moved facing toward the ground. We're going to lift the front of the quad up, and you'll see that's correct. We're going to lean the quad to the left, and that's correct. We're going to move or lean the quad to the right. That's correct. And the yaw we're going to check by rotating, and this is it right here, by rotating it to the left, and that's correct, and rotating to the right, and that's correct. So everything is looking good. And you'll notice now that the horizon right on. Let's go back to configuration. So this is done. Let's move forward. This is where you can change some of the settings to get, snappy, insane. It's just, you can do so much with this, and the sensitivity of the flight controller can change dramatically, meaning you can do tons of things with this controller. It's amazing. Okay, and we're going to move on, and we're completed now. So there's one last thing to do, and we're going to check failsafe. So real easy to do. We're going to arm the transmitter.
Armed.
We're going to give it a little throttle. And now we're going to turn off the transmitter. And it turned off. This is what you want. If anything happens between the transmitter and the receiver, for whatever reason, battery, reception, malfunction, will we lose reception between the transmitter and receiver? This is what happens. Your motor's shut down. It's an excellent way to check. So let's go ahead and turn the transmitter back on. And it came back on. Okay? We're going to pull the throttle down. We're going to disarm it. Everything works. If your failsafe does not work like we just went through, or like we just tested, you need to get into the manual, find out why it did not work like that, why it did not shut down, and I would not recommend at all to fly it until that's done. Okay, failsafe, extremely important. You want to make sure it shuts it down. This pretty much completes it now. Your controller is set up. We're ready to trim up the wires and put the props on, make sure everything's in the right direction. and we're ready to do our first test flight. See you in the next one. This is Danny with QuadLugs, and we're on our last few items to completing the box quad. We're going to go ahead and strap down our wires. This is how I normally turn them, and I'm facing them all out. But again, you can do it just as you want. This is going to keep it, you know, one, I guess, is to make it look nice. The other thing is to keep everything from getting into the props, or having a problem rather with the wiring getting in the props, and that would be a big problem if that happened. It would crash. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get all of these on. And try to keep it, you know, somewhat symmetrical, or all, you know, looking about the same distance. About. But again, you can do it however you want. Okay, we'll go inside now. And we'll just pull these wires in like this and make it look nice and neat. You can put additional wire ties here if you want to. Yeah, I think we're fine like it is. Now we're going to take our Velcro, and this is going to be for our battery to hold it down once it's installed, and we'll go over that when we fly. Do our first flight with it. And we're going to put it approximately, let me do this and I'll show you. Approximately in that location. Okay. And then the battery's going to fit in here. You know, again, we'll go over that after a while. That's done. So the only thing we have left is installing the props, and then we're ready to take it out for our first flight. There we are. See you then. This is Danny with QuadLugs, and we're installing the props. We're using with the box quad 845 props, and of course bright yellow. We have a few different, you know, colors, of course, but today we're using these. 8 inches tip to tip, 4.5 is the pitch. We're going to install the bushings, and we're going to size them up. And we'll pick one that seems to fit the best. And there we are. If you try the others, that one won't go on. This one's real loose. This one fits really well. So let's go ahead and take these off. So if you remember in the build, everything was revolving around motors, the position of the motors, and the rotation direction of the motors. And that's going to hold true with picking the proper prop to put on. These props are directional, they're clockwise and counterclockwise. And with the kit, you're getting 2 clockwise and 2 counterclockwise. So if you notice on the props, you look at the writing, and it says 8 by 4.5 L left, 8 by 4.5 R. So R clockwise, L counterclockwise. It stands for right and left. Anyway, R will be clockwise, L will be counterclockwise. And you can also tell how it's cut as to the direction it should be going to push the air down. Okay? We're going to put your bushing in, and they fit in like so. Okay? We'll have a video coming out later on balancing the props. It's always good to balance the props. The props normally come and they'll have some imperfections to it, and by balancing the props, and we normally just put a piece of tape on one end to achieve that, and you'll balance the props and they'll fly better. They'll fly good like this, but if you're filming, you'll get a little bit of vibration if the props aren't balanced properly. We'll go through that later. Okay? So if you remember, this is motor number 1, and this turns clockwise. So we'll get our prop, and it's hard for you to see here, but when you have it in your hand, you'll see R. Okay? And that would be clockwise. This is motor number 2, and it will go counterclockwise, and this says L. Motor number 3 will be clockwise. Motor number 4 will be counterclockwise. And now you have them on. You want to push them all the way down. And then apply your washer and the nut. When you tighten them down, you'll want to use a pair of pliers, or like a crescent wrench, and you would want to tighten them up and hold the motor and the prop and put a good bit of pressure on there. Okay? I would check this every flight, at least every other flight, but it's really easy. When you change the battery, you're going to go flying again, just double check. It just takes a second to check the prop before you plug in the battery. Again, we want to remember that the props really don't need to go on until you're ready to fly. And anytime you're working on your quad, make sure and take the props off. If you're indoors and you are plugging in your quad, I would also make sure that the props are off. Just safety. You really don't need the props until you're ready to fly. Okay? After tightening these up, you're ready to go. Clockwise, R, counterclockwise, L, clockwise, R, counterclockwise, L. Motor 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to double check this when we go to fly it for the first time. See you next time. Okay, we made it to the field. It's built. we're ready for our maiden flight. And this is going to be the maiden flight. It has not been flown before. We built it through the process of the videos. And let's double check and make sure that the props are on and see this one right here. I forgot to tighten that one up. Let's check them on. Check it every flight, at least every other flight. I recommend every flight. Real simple to do. 10 o'clock in the morning, 97, 98, I mean, no, 87, 88 degrees. It's going to be in the high 90s, maybe low hundreds today. And it's like 80% humidity, so it's, you know, already nasty out this morning. Anyway, enough of that. Let's go ahead and we're going to install the battery. And I'm going to set this one on edge. If you remember, some of them I said I would put them on edge or lay them down. You can do it either way. We're going to do it this way today. And this is the transmitter that we used when we set it up. We're going to go ahead and turn it on. Remember the mode switches. Okay. And this is the arm disarm. So this would be disarmed and this would be armed. So we can set it on disarm to start with. No big deal. We're still going to arm it, you know, by going all the way down the throttle and to the right to arm it also. So it's kind of a double safety there. Okay. This is the throttle. This is the rudder. This is the aileron. This is the elevator or pitch. Okay. It's on. We're going to plug it in. Okay, that's the sound we normally get from the ESC. Everything says it's in good shape. So let's go ahead and close it. And this is the maiden flight. So we're going to walk it over and get it ready. I would suggest to have it, you know, at least 20 foot away from you, 20 to 30 feet, until you get, you know, really used to it and get confident with it. Make sure you have enough distance. We're going to have a couple of build videos videos coming out on flying, how to fly a quad. That's coming up real soon. And I think that'll help a lot also. So anyway, here's the transmitter. Again, our flight mode is pushed all the way back. All of our switches are pushed all the way forward like we said in the video. We're gonna arm it all the way down and to the right. Remember, just a little bit of throttle, but you'll see there's nothing. Why? It's disarmed. So we're going to arm it, give it a little bit of throttle. And I mean, if you notice, it's just a little bit. So you want to be careful with that. And we'll check rotation again. The front left is going clockwise. The front right is counterclockwise. The back right is turning the wrong way. It should be clockwise. Turning counterclockwise. Good catch. We're going to double check that. Back left should be counterclockwise, and it's right. It's correct, rather. So it looks like we have one for some reason that's backwards, and this is a good reason why we double, triple check. Okay, we're going to unplug the battery. Turn the radio off. We're going to switch, if you remember, any two wires. And this is a good, for instance, to double check. I was not aware. I thought this was correct. You know, so always double check. If last thing you do is check before you fly, and that's what we're doing, just to make sure. So we're going to turn the transmitter on. We're going to plug the battery back in, and we're going to check it again. But this is another reason to double check. Your last catch-all is going to be right when you fly. Okay, we're going to arm it again. Again, all the switches are pushed forward. We're going to arm it. And just a little bit of throttle. And again, front left is turning clockwise. Front right is turning counterclockwise. Back right is now turning clockwise. Correct, we changed that. Back left is counterclockwise. We look good. Very little throttle. So what we're going to do now, and again, can't emphasize it enough, one of the biggest problems you're going to have is throttle control. So just a little bit of throttle until you get used to it. First thing we're going to do is give it a little throttle. We're going to make sure that nothing's acting strange, and then we'll lift it up and we'll go from there. Here we go. The only thing I did there was give it a little bit of throttle at a time, just a little bit at a time, until it got to a point where it wanted to lift up. Now you'll notice it's kind of veering over to the right a little bit. I'm giving it a little left trim. Let me show you what I did. This is the trim here, and the quad was turning this way, or was turned this way a little bit. So I gave it some left trim to straighten it out. That's all I did. We're gonna go ahead and pick it up again, and like I said, ease the throttle in until it starts taking off. We have a little bit of wind, and it's going from our left to right now, so we're gonna have to do a little bit of input to correct it. But that's something you're gonna, get the hang of it as time goes by. So after it sits for about this long, it disarms itself. If you notice the throttle, there's nothing. So let's arm it again, and we're ready. Add throttle, keep adding it, and there we go. We're a little bit less than half throttle now to get it to lift off the ground. And again, this is the wind blowing, and it's coming from a couple of different directions. But I'm having to correct that. So let's go take it for a spin. If you've never flown a quad, you won't be able to do this. You'll ease into this, but after a real sharp period, you'll get used to it, and you'll be doing this no problem. Box quad is a great learning tool. It's pretty tough, and it flies really good. I'm still just a little bit less than half throttle, just so you know. You'll get about anywhere from 5 minutes if you're flying it really hard to about 9 minutes if you're flying it pretty average. What I would suggest to do is to fly it for 5 minutes, get you a battery checker so you can check the cells on it, and see where you're sitting battery wise. after flying it for 5 minutes. Excuse me. You want to keep this, I normally fly down to like 3.8 cells, or 3.8 volts per cell. You can go a little bit lower. I wouldn't go down below 3.5. But I would fly for 5 minutes, land, check your cell count, and you know, if you still are not up to that 3.8 or 3.5, go ahead and fly it for another minute, check it. If it's still good, fly it for another minute, check it. Continue on with that till you know you're at 3.8 or at 3.5, and then see how many minutes you flew it. And I would set your timer. You know, you don't really have a timer on this transmitter, but you can set it on your cell phone. Any means of setting a timer. And then you'll know how long you can fly it at that flying pace. Now, as you get more confident and you fly it harder and harder, you know, you'll limit your flying time. I'm gonna land for a second. I actually have some sweat in my eyes and it's burning like fire. I want to disarm it. Sorry about that. Okay, we're ready to go. Again, apply power. It's a little bit less than half and it took off. And I'm giving it a little bit of input, not much at all. And I'll show you here how much input I'm giving. If we can get on my right finger, on this right here, you can see what I'm doing. So that's the amount of input I'm giving into it, and a little bit of throttle to keep it, you know, level. You'll get a hang of this really quick. So this is hands off. It's going to drift on you. This does not have GPS hold or GPS lock. We do have some videos coming out on installing GPS on the box quad. That's coming out real soon, and they do a good job. So you can see the input I'm doing. It's not very much at all. Okay, we're gonna go flying. Box quad flies extremely well. And as I was saying, this is the maiden. We went through the build, and this is just the product that you get once you finish the build. And this is it. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of be mean, I guess, but I'm gonna run through 3 or 4 batteries and have some fun with it. I love this thing. And our new ESCs are fantastic. So this is Danny with QuadLugs. And hope you enjoy it. Be safe with it. Mainly have fun with it. It's a great learning tool. And it's just really, really a great flying quad. If you have 2 or 3 of them already, you're going to find that you like this one a lot. And it becomes a go-to quad just to have a dead gum good time. Oh, don't forget to disarm it.